Welcome to this session of Sambhav 2020. We now have a seminar on yoga. Sharira Madhyam Khalu Dharma Sadhanam. The first duty is to take care of the body, and yoga is the best way to do that. Yoga means union of mind, body, and soul. It is an ancient physical, mental, and spiritual practice, a glorious part of our ancient tradition, a holistic approach to well-being, and a precious gift from India to the world. Chairing this session is Padmini Patiji. She is the Executive Committee member of ASANAS Society, and she'll be introducing the eminent panel of this session, Professor Rima Dada. So over to Mrs. Padmini Pati. Thank you very much. As you all know, yoga is an ancient Indian spiritual system. It is both a science and an art form of healthy and wholesome living. So I have the pleasure to introduce to you all Dr. Rima Dada. She is MD with a PhD, who is presently working as professor at All India Institute of Medical Sciences in New Delhi, where she established molecular reproduction and genetics facility. She is actively engaged in teaching, research, and genetic diagnostic services. Dr. Dada is Fellow of National Academy of Medical Sciences, International Medical Sciences Academy, and Academy of Standards and Ratings. Dr. Dada is pursuing research on genetic aspects of infertility, reproductive failure, recurrent ART failure, and idiopathic recurrent spontaneous abortion and childhood cancers. In the last 8 years, she is working on impact of yoga on the genome and epigenome. Dr. Dada has received several national and international awards, like the ICMR National Award for Outstanding Contribution in the field of genetics of infertility. She has also received the Young Scientist Award at 2nd European American course in clinical genetics in Croatia, G.P. Talwar Gold Medal, and Best Paper Award at Indian Society for Research in Reproduction Meeting, and Best Paper Award at Annual Congress of Indian Society of Andrology 3 times. She has delivered 5 orations and several plenary lectures and over 85 invited lectures at various meetings and conferences. Her research on genetics of glaucoma is amongst the top 2% in the world. She won the awards at American Society of Andrology meeting from 2009 to 2020 for her work on genetics of reproductive disorders, and also Best Paper Award at International Symposium on Genetics of Infertility at Salt Lake City, USA in 2010. In 2019 and 20, she received the award. Albani, in 2019 and 2020, she received the award for excellence and innovation in yoga research award at Symposium on Yoga Research at Albany, USA, and over 24 awards for her work on yoga in complex diseases like glaucoma, depression, male factor infertility, aging, and rheumatoid arthritis. Dr. Dada has published 162 original indexed articles of high impact, 65 chapters in books and DPT workshop manual and over 190 abstracts in American and European and international meetings and journals. Dr. Dada is a member of various professional societies and an ad hoc reviewer for several national and international indexed scientific journals. So over to Dr. Rima Dada, who will enlighten us more about her research on yoga. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity for speaking on the impact of yoga for the DIVYANGJAN. Dear children from across the world, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and organizers of Sambhav, greetings from India. I'm very happy to be a part of this digital platform to celebrate Sambhav 2020. I've been a part of these celebrations each year for the past few years. And I'm very happy that despite this pandemic, Alpana has continued this tradition to organize this year's Sambhav on a virtual mode. Sambhav has become a major milestone in renewing our commitment for the empowerment of Divyangjan. Through Sambhav, artists with disabilities and showcase their talents and prove to the global community that their efforts and courage are not hindered by any kind of obstacles or disabilities. Sambhav showcases our country's role in promoting inclusive growth in the global society. Today, I would be speaking on the role for yoga for the Divyangjan. I would like to emphasize that I would, in this study, during this talk, actually highlight to you some of the evidence-based studies that we are doing here, the randomized controlled trials, which are very high-powered studies, to show you the scientific evidence that how yoga can play a very major, vital role in improving the quality of life, as well as improving the health and well-being of children with any disability, as well as in promoting overall quality of life of the family as a whole. It's very important to understand that yoga is a profound science of well-being. It is a holistic technology which integrates the mind and the body. And in this age of super specialization, yoga plays a very, very major role because majority of the disorders and even disabilities have a strong psychosomatic component, and thus they need, rather than a small targeted approach which is targeting a particular organ or a particular system, it's important to adopt a methodology, a technique, a scientific technique, which is yoga, which impacts both the mind and the body and has impact on at the cellular and the molecular level. During the course of this talk, you will understand that how yoga impacts your DNA as well as RNA, and thus is able to cause an overall improvement in the health well-being. It's also important to understand that yoga is an experiential science, Anubhuti Shastra. The most important thing is that yoga, you can quantify the improvement based in by biochemical parameters, by studying various parameters at the cellular, molecular level, by studying the impact on the psychological impact, the physiological impact, the biochemical impact, and various parameters at the molecular level. So what is yoga? Yoga is a set of practices which is aimed at balancing physical, mental, and emotional well-being. It comprises of three main parts. It is the postures or the asanas, combined with breathing techniques, pranayama, and mindfulness, that is meditation. It is the union of the mind, body, and the soul, and the unions of one consciousness with the universal consciousness. It's very, very important to understand that yoga targets the body as a whole. And thus, it is seen that it impacts every organ system. It is important to understand that the asanas are just like the hardware of a computer, whereas meditation is the software. The main aim of the asanas is to bring the body in perfect alignment or geometry so that your trunk is upright, your spine has maintained its normal curvature, and so that you can then concentrate in meditation. And meditation is nothing but a state of heightened awareness in a non-judgmental way. And we try to tell the individuals to focus on their breathing and try to make the breathing deep and longer. So yoga helps to achieve a voluntary control over the involuntary functions. It's also important to emphasize that many of the disabilities that the children suffer from could be acquired or they could be genetic in origin. Now, it's always believed that when you have inherited a genetic disorder, there would be no improvement. But I would like to emphasize that now we know that there is something known as the epigenome, which is above the genetic landscape. And it's very important to know that there are a few genes which are the highly penetrant genes. When there is a mutation in those genes, it causes the disorder. But in the other, you find that even if there is a mutation which has caused a particular disorder, if you practice a healthy lifestyle, you practice yoga, you eat a healthy meal, depending upon your thoughts, your lifestyle, you can modulate the output or the expression of the genes and how the genes behave. So you have a very, very important tool in your hand, and our studies have shown that yoga positively modulates the epigenome by upregulating genes which are the anti-inflammatory genes, the genes which help to maintain the telomere length. They decrease the oxidative stress. They upregulate the genes which are promoting neuroplasticity, which helps to increase the emotional resilience and stability, enhance self-competence, self-regulation, and is very, very important for enhancing concentration, psychomotor skills, maintaining motor stability, and thus is of very vital importance for children with these disabilities. And if yoga is practiced by the family with the child, it will improve it will help in enhanced understanding with the children, with the child with a disability, and also would help in better bonding with the parents. So what is a disability? It is nothing but an impairment that may be cognitive, developmental, intellectual, mental, physical, or sensory, or a combination of these. It affects a person's life activities and may be present from birth, or it could be acquired. Now, there are different categories of impairment. There could be visual disability. For example, I would be giving you an example of glaucoma, which can actually result in blindness. Or we also have children having retinoblastoma, and when it is very advanced, you need to enucleate the eye, and thus they have visual disability. There could be intellectual disabilities. For example, there could be children who have mental retardation, developmental delay, for example, children with Down syndrome. I'll again give you an example of that. There could be physical disabilities. For example, there would be children with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. There could be some limb anomalies. There could be various disabling diseases. Again, I will give an example of adult rheumatoid arthritis also. There could be hearing impairment, and there could be numerous psychological disabilities like Alzheimer's, depression, anxiety, which really cripple one's life. And now with this pandemic, we are seeing more and more, there is a tsunami of mental disorders, which are in a steep increase in the incidence of stress, anxiety, and depression, and which are very major disabling factors in one's life. So these have a lot of implication on a person's quality of life because they affect the person's self-image. These people have poor, they have an inferiority complex. They are not able to perform simple tasks, and a simple task which takes just a second for the normal people to do, it takes them much longer time. And they have poor muscular, neuromuscular coordination, and they have difficulty in concentration. They are hyperactive. So this actually is responsible for a very poor self-image of these children. And yoga plays a very, very important role in enhancing their self-esteem, their self-image. So yoga is one of the 6 schools of ancient Indian philosophy, and it enables one to achieve a higher level of performance and helps the person to realize the potential within. And according to Hatha Pradipika, it says that yoga can be practiced by anyone, by the young, the old, the very old. If there's a person with a disability, it could be an acute or a chronic disability, it could be a painful disability, it could be people without limbs, they can practice yoga. Yoga has never recognized any barriers of age, sex, religion, or creed. It is a science, it's a technique which enhances well-being. So, as I told you, that yoga has 3 components. There are asanas, there is breathing, regulated breathing practices, and then there is meditation. Now, when these children with these special needs practice yoga, firstly, it should be done under a trained instructor, a well-qualified instructor. Still, they are actually able to do it on their own. And so there should be one-to-one impartment of these training. And initially, the asanas can be modified to meet or to the extent which the child can do. And later on, as the joint mobility increases, the stiffness decreases, the range of movement increases, the asanas can be done as they have been prescribed. So there are different asanas, and for different disorders, you would have different asanas which need to be done. For example, if there's a person who's having depression, then we focus on active asanas. Whereas, for example, if there are children with Down syndrome and they have a long, thick tongue, they are told to emphasize to do some pranayams like Sheetli and Sheetkari, which helps to improve the quality of their speech. And so asanas are postures, pranayama are regulated breathing practices, and then you have meditation. And there are different asanas, and I will not go into the detail of each, but I will give you the scientific evidence that how various these yoga as a whole is able to benefit these individuals. So there are certain postures which help to increase concentration. For example, there are attention deficit hyperactive disorders where the children are hyperactive, they are easily distractible, and our studies have shown that there is an increase in the secretion of various neurotransmitters which promote neuroplasticity, like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, DHEA, melatonin, which helps to regulate the sleep-wake cycle so that they're able to concentrate better. So there are various asanas. For example, when you do Surya Namaskar, you do Vrikshasana. So these children are able to concentrate better. They have a longer attention span. They're able to have enhanced learning, better memory, and they are able to communicate better. They are more social, better. They are able to socialize with others. So there are different asanas which help in different, different disabilities. And then you have these breathing practices. There are different types of pranayams which are recommended, and they are going to help. Again, as I just told you, they increase the concentration, attention, learning, memory. They enhance the communication skills. They make the person more calm, and they decrease the person who's distracted, and they enhance the learning span. Even in different disorders like cerebral palsy, it has been seen that it helps to increase the muscle tone. It helps the children to concentrate better, and it increases their psychomotor skills. Now, then you have this Down syndrome, in which there is developmental delay. These children have mental retardation, and it's been seen that in our studies, we have seen that when these people, you can see they have a long furrowed tongue, thick tongue, and in these people, there is an increased extra dosage of chromosome 21. And in these individuals, when they are born, they have low muscle tone, they have slow motor development, they have congenital heart defects, early onset of certain cancers, and Alzheimer's disease. And they have mild to moderate mental retardation. Now, when these children are made to practice yoga and do special types of pranayama, which improves their speech, it has been seen it helps to develop their psychomotor skills and their vital skills, and it helps to increase their self-efficacy, self-competence, physical and emotional fitness, and promote self-care behavior. It's been seen that if these children are brought up in enriched atmospheres, and they can actually be totally self-reliant. And I saw it last year when I was associated with this program last year, that these children were eating food on their own. They were such happy children. They performed plays, they were doing dances. And so it's very, very important that these children are made to do yoga. And if the family practices as a whole, they would see a profound improvement in these children's psychomotor skills and neuromuscular coordination, and improve in the muscle tone. So again, as I told you, in autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, yoga is the perfect platform to build vital skills. It increases the person's concentration, decreases the person's distraction and their hyperactivity, and increases the attention span, their alertness, and improves their mood. And they're able to have better self-competence and able to self-regulate. So there are numerous benefits of yoga for the DIVYANGJAN. So it helps to coordinate the activities of the mind, body, the emotion, increases their concentration, makes them more calm, more self-competent. They're able to concentrate better, improves their learning and their memory. It enhances their motor skills, the motor stability. It also helps to enhance their locomotor skills. It reduces the stiffness in their various joints, increases the range of movement, enhances their psychomotor coordination, reduces hyperactivity, improves attention span, and also enhances their immunity. And because they're able to better communicate with others, it reduces their aggression and reduces their dependence on drugs, and it also helps in thus their rehabilitation. So the first example that I'll give you is rheumatoid arthritis. Now, rheumatoid arthritis is a very severe, painful, systemic disease in which there are articular and extra-articular symptoms. It involves not only the joints, but it also involves the lung, the heart, the brain. It's a very severe, chronic, progressive autoimmune disease, and it causes disfiguring of the joints, and it's a very disabling disease. It also affects children, which is a major cause of disability in these children. Now, what we've seen is that in these group of individuals, it's been seen that now with an increase in pollution, it not only affects the joints, it also causes a flare in the increase in the incidence of autoimmune diseases, especially rheumatoid arthritis. So what we did this study with the aim of studying that whether yoga would help these individuals with this systemic manifestations and functional disability. Would it improve these individuals so that though they would need drugs, but would the amount of drug required be less, and would they actually benefit so that they could become self-reliant, and it would improve their quality of life, because these people are really dependent on other individuals for doing the simple acts of, for example, buttoning this shirt. And we saw that as these individuals, when they came to us, they were on wheelchairs, and after about 1.5, 2 months, these people could walk on their own. They could perform majority of the acts of daily living on their own. So these were randomized controlled trials, and we had two groups, the yoga group and the control group. And we studied various parameters of quality of life, depression severity, disease activity, and the functional status. And so we studied various markers of neuroplasticity, oxidative stress. We studied the DNA damage, the cellular health and lifespan by sirtuins, the telomere length, and the telomerase activity, and various inflammatory markers, because it's a chronic progressive inflammatory arthritis. And what we found is from our studies that post practice of yoga, we find that there is a decrease in the, you can see that the inflammation decreases. There's a decrease in the ESR levels. Also, the level of the reactive protein has shown a decrease. When we study the health assessment, we find that there is a significant improvement, and we also find that in this severe crippling arthritis, there is comorbid depression, and there's a decrease in the severity of depression when you use this inventory and quantify the severity of depression. Now, to understand why there is improvement, we studied the levels of various inflammatory markers. Now, there is like interleukin-6. Now, this is the inflammatory marker which is responsible for the extra-articular symptoms which occur in the brain, the heart, and the lung. Interleukin-17 is responsible for the inflammation which occurs in the joint, and this is responsible for the synovial hyperplasia. The tumor necrosis factor causes osteoclast proliferation and survival. It causes the bony erosions, the disfigurement of the joint, and you can see in green that the inflammatory cytokine, which is causing the articular symptoms, shows a significant decline post-practice of yoga. The tumor necrosis factor, responsible for synovial hyperplasia, osteoclast proliferation, shows a significant decline, and the extra-articular symptoms, where the interleukin-6, which causes the extra-articular symptoms, cause a significant decline post-practice of yoga. Because of this, you find that there is a decrease in the severity of rheumatoid arthritis in both, and there's a decrease in the pain on the joints. So in the visual analog scale, there's a decrease in the pain intensity, and also the extra-articular symptoms show a significant decline. Now, it has been seen that this disease also has a genetic component, and a decrease in the levels of HLA-G due to mutations in this gene. There's a polymorphism which is found in the 3' end of this gene, because of which the levels of HLA-G are lower. Now, what we find is post-practice of yoga, the levels of this gene increases. Now, this is very, very important. The importance is this, that if you have low levels, you have an increased susceptibility to develop rheumatoid arthritis. Now, it was believed, so if there is a family which is having this insertion deletion polymorphism, if they know it's running in the family, if they practice yoga, then the symptoms will be very mild. And so you can already, you can prevent, or you can even minimize the severity of the disorder by practicing yoga. So we see that this level, which was because of the insertion deletion polymorphisms, the level of this HLA-G were low, the non-classical HLA-G molecule, but the levels increased post practice of yoga. So not only was there a decrease in the inflammatory cytokines, but this is an anti-inflammatory cytokine, and we studied a panel of anti-inflammatory cytokines, and you can see that the anti-inflammatory molecules show an increase. So not only there is a trend towards a decrease in the inflammation, but also an increase in the level of various factors which are anti-inflammatory. So that is responsible for a decrease in the ESR, a decrease in the C-reactive protein. Otherwise, if they do not practice, normally these people are being given steroids to decrease the levels of these acute phase reactants. So these individuals are on drugs. So there is a group which is doing yoga and they are on drugs, and there is a control group which is just on drugs. And you can see in the group that practiced yoga, there is a significant decline in the period of study as compared to the group which is just on drugs. And you can see that there is a decline in the levels of these inflammatory cytokines. And this is responsible for this disease going into molecular remission. And so yoga helps to re-establish immunological tolerance. We also studied oxidative stress because it is one of the key factors which is associated with inflammation, and we find that the reactive oxygen species shows a decline. The total antioxidant capacity shows an increase where there is no change in the group that is not practicing yoga. And this is the oxidative DNA duct. It is a marker of DNA damage. So most of the disorders which are associated with inflammation and oxidative stress, it can affect the DNA. There is DNA damage, and this also affects the epigenome and dysregulates the expression of various genes. So yoga helps to reduce oxidative stress. It helps to increase the total antioxidant capacity, so the antioxidant defense mechanisms go up, and decreases the level of DNA damage, which is assessed by studying the level of this 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine. Now, how are these people able to cope better with the problem that they have? And that is the comorbid depression, the levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. You can see, I showed you that when we studied their Beck depression inventory, we find that the severity of depression goes down. This is because they become more emotionally resilient. And the reason for that is there is an increase in the synthesis of various factors which promote neuroplasticity, that is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. I have not shown others like DHEA, which is showing a significant increase post-practice of yoga. Now, depression mainly occurs because of decline in the levels of serotonin, and these serotonin analogs are the most commonly sold drugs in the market, and they have numerous side effects. But you can see here that post-practice of yoga, there's an increase in the levels of serotonin. There's also an increase in the level of feel-good hormones like beta endorphins post-practice of yoga. And sirtuins are histone deacetylases. These are longevity genes, and they upregulate the defense mechanism, which also show an increased expression post-practice of yoga. So this, we have seen that in any chronic disorder, we see that the biological age is shorter than the chronological age because of oxidative stress. But we see that in yoga, it helps to maintain the telomere length, and there's an increase in the telomerase activity. And because of this, because of the decline in oxidative stress, decline in the inflammatory parameters, we see that the disease activity score shows a significant decline, and there is an improvement in the overall health of the individual. So yoga helps to induce molecular remission and re-establish immunological tolerance in this severe autoimmune disease. We were also able to show all this, that this is very important, and it is not only important in rheumatoid arthritis, but various other autoimmune diseases, it will benefit. So what is the impact of yoga on disability? It decreases the disease activity score, it decreases the pain perception, it improves the functional status, so it improves flexibility, range of motion, coordination, so it would be useful in any disability. It decreases the rate of cellular aging, it promotes neuroplasticity, so decreases stress, improves your coping mechanism, improves cognition, concentration, improves cellular health and longevity. There is regression of the inflammatory process, increase in anti-inflammatory cytokines, reduction in the severity of depression, and overall improvement in the quality of life. And this is very, very important that along with the children, the parents also practice yoga, because they are also under severe stress when they have to cope every day with a child with a special ability. And thus, if they practice yoga, that would enhance understanding, better bonding with the child, but would also enhance their emotional resilience, and they would better be able to cope with this issue. So this is, I have already talked about. I also wanted to show you, in addition to that, when people have high levels of stress and they're depressed or they have a disability because of poor self-image, They have disorder patterns of sleep. They are not able to sleep properly. They suffer from insomnia. And our studies have shown that there's an increase in the level of melatonin. Now, this is a major hormone which is helping to maintain the sleep-wake cycle or the circadian rhythm. And when this is disrupted, it disrupts the various hormonal milieu, and the hypothalamo-pituitary axis also gets disturbed. But we've seen that the melatonin levels they increase post-practice of yoga. In addition to that, we find that there is an improvement in the mitochondrial integrity as is seen by the COX-2 activity, which is very, very important, and that is responsible actually for the decrease in the oxidative stress. Now I would be talking to you about glaucoma. Now, glaucoma is one of the second leading causes of blindness after cataract. Now, if left untreated, it actually results in blindness, and therefore it's the cause of visual disability. And it's very, very important to know that till date it was believed that the only modifiable risk factor in glaucoma was the intraocular pressure. But now it's known that various other factors like the blood flow in the retina, the oxidative stress, the inflammation, the enhanced apoptosis of the cells, the retinal ganglion cell is actually responsible for glaucoma. And our studies in glaucoma have actually shown that when people practice yoga, especially when they do pranayama and meditation, you can actually increase the expression of anti-inflammatory genes which confer neuroprotection, which help to maintain the trabecular meshwork, prevent the clogging of the pores, the spaces of Fontana in the trabecular meshwork, and there's an upregulation of the antioxidant genes. So the various mechanisms which are damaging the retinal ganglion cells are getting decreased, and various factors which confer protection to the retinal ganglion cells show an increase. So here the number of genes which are giving protection to the retinal ganglion cells, increasing the blood flow to the retina, decreasing inflammation and oxidative stress in the retina, actually show an upregulation, whereas those factors which are causing clogging of the pores of the trabecular meshwork, causing inflammation in the retina, actually show a downregulation. So I summed up the findings of these studies by showing that the anti-inflammatory genes and the anti-inflammatory cytokines and various cytokines which confer neuroprotection show an upregulation. The factors which help to maintain the trabecular meshwork like FGFR1 are showing an increase. Those factors which cause a thickening of the trabecular meshwork and MAP kinase 10 and MAP kinase 15 which cause a resistance to the aqueous outflow show a decrease in the levels. The factors which on activation cause death of the retinal ganglion cells show a decline, whereas those factors which promote neuroplasticity, which promote synaptogenesis, retinogenesis, and enhance retinal ganglion cell survival, like NGFR, BDNF, neuregulin, actually show an increased expression post-practice of yoga. Now, to understand that why there is a decrease in the oxidative stress, which is one of the key factors which is responsible for both any autoimmune disease, inflammatory disorder, or glaucoma, we decided to study the mitochondrial integrity. And we find that post-practice of yoga, there is an improvement in the mitochondrial integrity. So you can see that these cells, here you can see by flow cytometry, the number of these dots which you can see here in this fourth quadrant increase, showing that there's an improvement in the mitochondrial integrity. We studied various genes which help to promote mitochondrial biogenesis and integrity, and it shows that post-practice of yoga, there is an increase as compared to the non-yoga group, and this is responsible for the improvement in the mitochondrial integrity, which is responsible for decreased production of free radicals and increased production of ATP. So the energy to various organ systems increases. And this is also very, very important because there are various mitochondrial diseases which affect the skeletal muscles, which affects the brain, which affects the heart, which is responsible for many disabilities. And therefore, with improvement in the mitochondrial integrity and the mitochondrial DNA, there is very important that this is going to help in enhancing the muscle strength and will help various mitochondrial disorders like Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy, which is responsible for visual disability. And then there are various skeletal muscle disorders. We also found that by practice of yoga, there was an increase in the mitochondrial copy number and also an increase in the expression levels of NAD, which is very, very important and shows that there is overall improvement in the mitochondrial integrity. And now I will talk of depression. So we all know that this last few decades, there has been a real steep increase in the incidence of mental health disorders stress, anxiety, depression, especially in this pandemic. And also with all these with disabilities, there is a level of depression, there is comorbid depression. And it's very, very important to understand that various drugs are given for depression. But what happens, these drugs take longer time to act, and everybody may not show improvement. There are frequent relapses. So it's very, very important that if you follow yoga and you just practice it regularly, we see that again, we did randomized controlled trials, and you can see that the groups that practice, this is shown in gray, which practice yoga, there was a significant decline in the severity of depression in these individuals. And to understand why this decrease, as I told you, that there is an increase in the synthesis of various factors which promote neuroplasticity, which helps to maintain neural health. The synaptogenesis increases, and this is helping to enhance our learning. So what is happening, that yoga is not only improving the functionality, it is also improving the structure of the brain, especially in centers like the hippocampus. We see that in these children who are having hyperactivity disorders, there is a very short attention span. We find that yoga would really improve their concentration, attention, learning, memory. And I'm sure if yoga is practiced by not only children with disabilities, but by the entire family, even the healthy siblings, it would enhance their learning, memory, concentration, better communication skills, better social, they're able to socialize better, they're able to communicate better. This decreases their frustration, decreases their anger levels, because sometimes when they are not able to express themselves, then they have anger outbursts. So it's very, very important so that we enhance our concentration, communication, cognitive abilities, and we are more calmer. We practice yoga because the various factors which are maintaining neuroplasticity show an increase. And as I told you, serotonin is the hormone which is the low levels of which causes depression, shows a significant increase post practice of yoga. So, and also it's been seen that people who have depression, and because there is chronic depression and stress and anxiety in these individuals and also in the parents, these people tend to age faster. So their biological age is much higher than their actual chronological age. And we find that post practice of depression, and one of the factors which triggers aging faster is oxidative stress. And we find that oxidative stress decreases, and decrease in oxidative stress and a concomitant increase in the total antioxidant capacity actually helps to maintain the telomere length. The level of DNA damage decreases, and the telomerase activity increases, which helps to maintain the telomere length. So it has been seen that people who who are depressed, they age 3 times faster than the people who are not depressed. And so telomere length is maintained, so their rate of aging would also slow down, and depression would, the severity would decrease. So we see that the level of the stress hormone actually goes down after practice of depression. The levels of the histone deacetylases and the defense, the genes which help in the defense mechanisms increases. And this is the first study to show, our studies are the first to show that if you practice yoga, you can increase the levels of sirtuins post practice of yoga. Initially, it was known that if you had red wines, it increases the levels of resveratrol, and that was responsible for increase in sirtuins. And so many drugs were made which are very expensive, but yoga without any expense can increase the levels of sirtuin and decrease the level of various inflammatory cytokines and increase the various factors. We can see that there is also an improvement in the mitochondrial integrity. So we've shown that people spend millions of dollars and hundreds, so much money is being spent on research to how to promote factors which can reduce the rate at which you age. And with aging are associated so many disabling disorders like Alzheimer's, dementia, and even, as I told you, people who are depressed and who have high levels of stress. We find that in these individuals, you find that there is earlier they age faster. So we've shown that you can slow down the rate of aging if you practice yoga, because the oxidative stress as well as targets the telomeres and making them shorten faster. So there is decrease in the oxidative stress, increase in the antioxidant capacity, and telomerase activity increases, which helps to maintain the telomere length. Also, I wanted to just touch upon this, that now these disorders, the cause of these disabilities could be acquired or they could be genetic. Now, if you want to increase or improve the quality of your genome, again, you should practice yoga. Now, it's important that we've shown that when you practice yoga here, each dot represents the sperm DNA, and you can see the number of these dots towards the x-axis represents the damaged DNA, and the dots towards the y-axis represents the healthy, good quality DNA, the DNA with good integrity. So we can see that with practice of yoga, the DNA quality also shows an improvement. Now, when there is oxidative damage, you find that in the sperm, the number of mutations increases because there is oxidative DNA damage, and that oxidative DNA damage impacts the genome and the epigenome negatively. But you can improve the quality of the DNA damage by decreasing the levels of oxidative stress. And you can see that we have quantified the DNA damage, and we see that the sperm DNA damage shows a steep decline, and there's an improvement in the genomic integrity. So this impacts not only the father's quality of the sperm DNA and the testicular and reproductive health improves, but it also impacts the health trajectory of the offspring. And so they have less incidence of genetic and epigenetic defects. So yoga is so important. I also wanted to highlight here that I've talked of the impact of yoga on the DIVYANGJAN, but it's also important to understand that the whole family bears the burden, and parents are highly stressed. They are worried what would happen if they are not there, and their daily lifestyle is impacted, and they have poor quality of life because they are so stressed when they are bringing up children with these disabilities. And we've shown that if parents practice yoga, it can significantly decrease the levels of psychological stress and improve their quality of life. You can see here the levels of these BD2 scores have significantly declined, and there is improvement in all 4 domains: the physical health, psychological health, social relationships, and the environment post practice of yoga of the family, of the parents when they practice yoga. So it's very, very important that along with the child, the parents and the family as a whole practice yoga. And I think this is the best time to practice yoga because there are government advisories not to go out at this time of the pandemic. So within the confines of your home, the whole family should practice yoga so that the health of the family as a whole improves. So in addition to that, I would just like to tell you that we've seen that when there are children with disabilities, parents try to indulge them by giving them tasty food, sometimes fast food. I would just like to emphasize that yoga is entire lifestyle. So try to have a whole plant-based, unrefined food that not only helps nurtures your health, but it also nurtures the huge microbiome in our intestine, which is linked to your brain, and also increases the level of serotonin. And so this whole plant-based, unrefined, unprocessed food helps to nurture the gut microbiome and ensures its diversity. So healthy lifestyle, doing yoga is very, very important to reduce our stress levels, reduce the severity of the disabling disorders, and overall improve the quality of life. So I would like to summarize by just telling you that yoga helps to improve your overall quality of life, and it improves your concentration, cognitive abilities, attention, learning, memory. It enhances your psychomotor coordination, improves flexibility, reduces stiffness, increases your range of motion. It improves your neuromuscular coordination and locomotor skills. It decreases stress, enhances overall quality of life, reduces your biological age, and helps to regulate your circadian rhythm and regulate your sleep-wake cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Reema Dada, for talking on yoga and explaining in detail about its benefits. And we would also like to thank the chairperson of this session, Mrs. Padmini Pati, Executive Committee member of ASANAS Society. So we'll be back with you people at 12 for this time music therapy workshop. Till then,